Okay, welcome my relatives to my YouTube channel, Startup Art Therapy to Rewire Your Brain. And this is a YouTube channel that talks about all things trauma, advice, insights, and solutions on how to heal trauma. And we are in our Juneteenth celebration week of Black history and celebrating the resilience of our African American beautiful brothers and sisters. And today we have Patrick Morrison, who is a former NFL player who played with the New York Giants, and he is an author and a presenter, and he is also a social worker. So we're going to get to hear his amazing story. Recently published 2 different books. I'll let him introduce himself and tell you about himself, and then we're going to get into some really good questions about his experience and how he has used creativity and the art form of writing to tell his story. All right, Patrick.
Carrie, thank you for inviting me. Thank you for having me on your show. I really appreciate it. Once again, just to get my story out. And it started, let me start with this. Getting my story out started when I used to live in Philadelphia. And, you know, little kids want to know, he played football. What team did he play for? And teachers asked me to come into their school and talk to the children about football and my career as a football player, even though it was a short period of time. But the storyline was, I guess, so compelling. They said, I think you should put it in book form because you have a great story to tell. So from there, I don't know, 2015, 2016, I started writing the book. And my first book is called Before Common Ground. And it's called Before Common Ground. I'm going to show you the cover of the first book in a minute. Is because if you watch football and sports in America now, it's really multicultural, multiracial, and multi-ethnic. But there was a time in America when sports weren't as diverse as it could have been at that period of time in regard to race. There's definitely not too many people that came from another country and played in an American sport. So I was born in London, England, a place called Paddington, which is like a little city outside of London. And I was raised there until I was 8 years old. And we could get into detail how that transpired and what happened after that brought me to the US. And I talk about that journey from England, to the US, and to your platform, some of the trauma that, yes, I dealt with in that transition, right? And when I made that transition, yes, I learned a lot about America and its fixation on race, color, and the color rainbow, and where I laid in that color rainbow, being an outsider, not being organic to the US. So yes, the book is enlightening, it's insightful, and it's from a perspective of an Englishman that was raised in the US, because I left when I was 8 years old. So I had those early years, but my formative years was raised in the US. So I've had like a bicultural understanding of who I am. My parents are Jamaican. So I have the Jamaican household, I have the British culture, and I have the American culture, all to draw from, assess, and evaluate where I am and where I fit. And that was a struggle in itself, being a young Black boy in America.
Well, thank you. Congratulations on your books. That's amazing. I can't wait to read them. And we met at LaGuardia Airport coming back from New York, where you were visiting your mom for Father's Day, and, having incredible influence of Jamaican and England and the US, and seeing how it all ties together to make you the incredible person you are today. It's just really amazing, and I can't wait to read your story and for our listeners to hear your story here. So just curious, we're celebrating Juneteenth, and this is a very interesting week, a lot of celebration, a lot of reflection, and just wanting to ask about, what does that mean for you being, bicultural and, um,
Yeah, so the Juneteenth celebration, 1865, when all the Africans found out that they were free after the emancipation, which was already signed in 1863. So the folks down in Texas got the message late, but now that we are African Americans are technically free, or was technically free from 1865. As an outsider looking in, once again, I look at the journey that African Americans have taken in America and how far they have come, but how much further they must go to be on an equity playing field with the general population here in America. I think you can look at current politics of what's going on with D&I and different programs being taken away that's not allowing the African American or Blacks in America to compete on an even playing field. Some of those ladders to help are being taken away. So, and that's what I see on the outside. And yes, I am part of that. But, my mother, it wasn't part of the American slave trade. My dad wasn't, my roots isn't in America. So the Black American, his pain may be a little bit different than mine because it's more deeply rooted actually, literally in the soil of America, in which mine isn't. So I'm like an outsider looking in that has assimilated into the culture of America and found my place. And unfortunately, I found my place because of my color. And I am now in a box because I've lost my English accent, so I can't say, "How do you do, old chap?" and time for tea and that don't work because I lost all that, right? So I can't even separate myself and be, and be one of those type of folks who, unfortunately, yes, if you're from another country, speak a different language, you're more accepted. Even Idris Elba, or oh, he's not American, he's British. He's a British actor. He's beautiful. Look at everyone loves him. But if he didn't have, if he wasn't born there and born here, it might have been a different story for him. Who knows, right? But so I have a story to tell, and I talk about it. Here we go. Can you see?
You put it right in front of your face.
Oh, you learned, yep. So I talk about that journey from London to the United States. That's why I call it Before Common Ground. And I talk about how, once again, how being a professional athlete coming over that period of time, and there weren't too many foreign athletes playing in National Football League. Today, you see quite a few that's born in Nigeria, Australia, all over Spain. They come, they're kickers, they're running backs, they're linebackers, all over the field, foreigners, right? But there was a time, there weren't too many, if any, that came from another country that were able to play in the National Football League. So that's why I call it Before Common Ground, because now it's common ground.
That is such an appropriate title. Yeah. And we were talking about this a little bit at the airport when we met. When coming as a young Black boy from England over to here and noticing the difference in the way people were treated if you were of color, and wanting to just hear a little bit about your experience.
Yeah, so I went back December to England. Unfortunately, my sister passed away of cancer, so I went back to see her before she passed away. And one thing I did remember and notice once again is that England is very diverse, very diverse. You got Jamaican, you got East Indians, you have the Polish, you have organic English folks. So it's very, and they're all walking the streets intermingling. And I remember that growing up, right? So I can't say I even experienced from birth to 8 much outward resistance to me with my color. The history of Caribbeans coming into England as full-time residents started with the Windrush boats that came over in, I think, 30s, 40s, when the early immigrants from the islands that worked in Jamaica and the Caribbean under British rule, they were given British citizenship. So they came into England and they were British citizens. And my mom was there. That's how I got to England. Born in England, my mother was one of those folks that came across and got employed. She was employed in hospitals and everything else. Where if you compare that to the U.S., we had segregation in the 30s, right? So you wouldn't find a Black nurse or a Black doctor working in a predominantly quote unquote white hospital. We had Providence Hospital, that was an all Black hospital, and you had your white hospital. So that was the difference. As I learned American history, that there was a distinct difference, even though they maybe had some racial issues, because England started or English and Spain started the whole slavery thing. However, the humanity, I guess, that they realized later on, they gave up slavery earlier than they did in the US and allowed the people to be part of the community, part of the nation, and grow, which America's history is a little bit different than that. So when I came here, I still had the British mindset that everyone's going to love me and everyone's going to like me. And I didn't really I didn't know about the dynamics, the distinct dynamics of race, color, classism that exists here in America. But I was soon awakened to that.
Yeah, and how impactful that must have been for you as a young boy. And and do you want to speak to that? What were your feelings when you started realizing that?
Well, I realized it real quick as a 4th grader, going to Christopher Columbus Elementary School on the south side of New Rochelle, New York. Or, no, excuse me, the west side of New Rochelle, New York. And the Black children, and especially the Black boys, would want to fight me, right? Because obviously, once again, I'm not organic to America, so I don't have any friends yet. But I'm the tall, dark-skinned, new guy that sounds funny. I still have my accent right now, right? I haven't lost it yet. So now I got that British accent. I'm tall, I'm dark-skinned, and the girls want to know, like, who's the new guy? And the guys are like, I don't care who the new guy is. We want to beat him up. So my first introduction to the U.S. was, you could call it traumatic, where I go to school, got to fight. And I used to I was not a fighter. And I write it in my book that, go to school and get into fights, go to the principal's office. My mom get called down. She couldn't make it because she worked. And she just got fed up and said, you got to stop coming home fighting. Stop coming home crying. Guys, I wasn't a fighter. I wasn't exposed to fighting just because I was a bit different. And the first people that I'm fighting with, the people that look like me, right? The people that look like me that I'm fighting because I'm different. I'm different, right? Because I sound different. So I'm not here. I'm not from here. So that was interesting growing up in the early years.
Yeah, so you were getting racism from your own people. I mean, and we talk about, like, in my work with Native American culture, the internalized oppression where they call each other dirty Indian, or if you're not a full blood, or if you're a half blood, there's a lot of schism even within the fabric of the Native American culture as a whole. So it's like there's kind of the same pattern that happens with Latinos that I have been in my conversations and being part of the Latino culture here in Northern California, there's a, majority, we're in minority. The whites are minority now in California, which is cool.
Yeah,
But just seeing how, the ones that have like more colonized minds, who have more white blood, feel more superior. So, and I think we talked a little bit about that, how the lighter skinned blacks and the darker skinned blacks, there was a rift there, but you said it's kind of healed over time, right?
yeah. I think I made a joke about that at the airport. But yeah, so right, so I'm the dark skinned guy at the school, and and I think believe it or not, I think most of the girls liked, the light skinned or Puerto Rican guys, right? So they were cute. They had straight hair, their skins were fair, and they were more attractive at that point. I think even in the early years in high school, I think you had like DeBarge. Remember the musical group DeBarge, right? So those were those were the stars. Like there was no Wesley Snipes yet. There was no. I'm not sure Denzel really had hit his peak yet at that time. But it wasn't. Dark skin was not in. Let's just say dark skin was not in as the preferable tone of man you want to go date, right? Until I mentioned it was until Wesley Snipes was going around kicking everybody's butt, light skin, dark skin, white, black, everybody. He's like everyone wants to be Wesley Snipes, and he was a handsome guy, when he was younger, he was cut up, and so we use it as a joke, but it was around that time period where there became a shift, where it didn't really matter if he was light or dark, what that you got appreciated for who you were, and black dark skinned guys now became part of the platform of choice.
Yeah.
So yeah,
That's really interesting to have seen that culture change within your own community. And so we heard a little bit about how when you started, school, you got beat up by other Black kids. So how was it when you started noticing the difference in the white communities and how you were treated there as a dark-skinned Black man?
and that's interesting, right? So part of the African American journey, as I've learned, part of the damage that slavery did, and Jim Crow and the Black laws did, the Black codes did, was to imprint in the minds of Black folks of self-hate, to hate yourselves and even hate anyone that looks like you. Um, uh, I received maybe more quote unquote hate from folks that look like me than than from white folks, um, at that period in my life. Yes, and like I said, I went to Christopher Columbus High School. I mean, elementary school, which was in the West Side, which was an Italian neighborhood, strictly Italian, strictly Italian. I remember to this day, I get my Italian nights across the street from the school. I played baseball at the boys club behind the school that had, a lot of Italian boys on the squad. I think I may have been one of two Black guys that played in the entire league. That's because I lived in the area. So, so yeah, I experienced more from my own, than I did from white children at that time. And that's not to say they didn't have their issues with Blacks. I'm a child. It's just that I didn't experience it in elementary.
Okay.
You know,
So fast So fast forward and being out in the world, you're now a teenager or a young adult. How were you feeling received? And because you ended up being a professional NFL player, football player for the New York Giants. And just we were talking a little bit about that, like how being a Black football player, especially dark skinned Black in the NFL, was pretty challenging, had its moments, right?
Well, I think the level and the level of racism or the level of concern around race may have dissipated a bit on the field. Because if you look at the football field or basketball field or track and field, the majority of the people you see look like me, right? You can be dark skinned no matter, as long as you're running fast or jumping high, you're accepted, right? But it's those that are managing the teams, that's managing the bodies that's running up and down or jumping high. What does that look like? And then you recognize that there weren't too many of us that was managing, is either coaches or general managers or owners, even to this day, of many of these teams that we would like to be part of. We want to be managers. We know the game inside out. We played it for 20 years, played it since we were youth, we played in college. And now, I think we know a little bit about the sport. Can we get an opportunity to coach? And for many years, obviously, that was a no-no until I think Art Shell for the Raiders back in the early 90s, I think. He was the first African-American to get a coaching job in the NFL. So,
Well, it wasn't until the 90s that happened.
yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Right. So, so I don't think the race, because one thing about sports, it brings everyone together. Because we're all on the same agenda to win against the opponent. And we don't care who the opponent looks like or what they're doing. We, as a group, our coach, the manager, decided you're the best at defensive end, you're the best at running back, you're the best at quarterback. We're going to put you in, and you're going to beat this other team. So we come together as a team to go beat the other team, in spite of color, race, or even if you could speak the same English, speak the same language, right? And one thing I say this all the time about New Rochelle, New York, and that is we were blessed to be raised in that small city outside of New York City, right next to the Bronx, next to Mount Vernon. In that, it was a very, as they use the word, diverse community. So we had Irish, we had Italian, we had Spanish, you had Black, you had light-skinned Black, you had dark-skinned Black. The North Side, which was the wealthy, went to school with the South Side, which was marginally, employed. We all went to the same high school and we interacted. We got to know each other as human beings. And we realized he's just like me. She's just like me. We just come from different parts of the neighborhood, and we are forced, quote unquote, to get along or go to school together, or go to lunch together, eat at the same table. And even at times, yes, in the lunchroom, you may have the tables separated, everyone's with their own friends, their own kind. But when it came to sports, it really didn't matter. We were all we were all for the same goal, and that is to win. And that's what we see. You see that in professional sports all the time, and you see it in college sports. We don't care what your religion is, what none of that is. We just want to win. It's what happens after the game is over.
So tell us about that. What happens after the game is over? What happens when you're walking down the street at night and, there's a lot of fear in the many different racial diversity communities?
Yeah, and one of the things that I think it's a blessing that I had the opportunity to play professional football, even though it was for a short time. But now, when I'm looked upon, and I worked many years, like you said, in social work and in corporate America, the first thing people want to talk to me about is sports, and that's it. Like, I don't have any other insight on politics, on health and wellness, on social issues. It's all about sports, which I'm not going to take I'm not going to say I'm not. There's something to be given or give back in that with those experiences that you're asking me now. But I'm more than just a basketball player or a football player, someone who could jump high or run fast. I have a brain. I have some insights. And to a point, sometimes I don't even tell people I play sports. I just say, nah, long time ago, and try to get into a good conversation about, whatever the topic is that I could be a part of a real topic that's influential to change people's minds and their actions for the better outside of sports. You know. So I still run into it because people see me one way. They see me just as an athlete. And I'm more than that. I'm just trying to get away from that sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting when you get put into a hole, pigeonholed into one category to try to redefine yourself as something else. And especially when you have racial issues in the political climate that sometimes can work against us, it's a little challenging, even more challenging. You have to work harder.
You got to work harder. Yeah.
Uh,
So one of the things I think I talk about, I ran in, and that's the thing too. Like, as I experienced things on my journey, if I didn't play in a game or I thought I was better than someone, I fell also into the trap of associating everything to racism. And it's out there, and we know it's real. We definitely know it's real. But sometimes I had to take a step back and just reassess the whole picture and do another evaluation of myself to ensure that what I'm seeing is what I'm seeing, and what I'm seeing, it's real what I'm seeing. All of it, not only externally, but also internally. Because there were definitely moments when I played, when I didn't play, and I talk about this in this book, the first one, about that, where I thought I should have played. Thought I should have played my freshman year. I was a high school superstar. I could have went to any college. I decided to go to this college, and I come here and I'm not starting. Got to be racist. Got to be racist. They started this white guy, and everyone knew he wasn't a better athlete than me, and he wasn't. He wasn't. He wasn't a better athlete. He wasn't fast. He didn't make any big hits. But when I realized was that even though he wasn't a better athlete, I couldn't get my calls done. I couldn't get everybody in the appropriate position before the snap of the ball so they could play well. So it was more than just my athletic ability. Although I was a better athlete, I didn't have, at that moment as a freshman, the ability to communicate better and to communicate the calls. But I wasn't mature enough to see that. I would get the call in late, then I'll go make a great play. But part of getting the defense set is to get the play in early, figure it out a little bit earlier. Don't wait for the ball to get snapped before you run. So it's those little things that I thought was like racism why I didn't start. Oh, he didn't like me. I'm better than him. No, it was a little more than that. But I didn't see it. So sometimes we have to self-reflect on ourselves and see what roles we play in us not necessarily meeting the objectives that we want to meet in life. We all know that there's racism out there. We all know that there's, division out there. We know. But we don't want that to consume us so much that we lose a sense of self and our role in this whole picture, right? Because this society manipulates our minds, and we don't even know it. We don't even know it. So we have to, go back to the drawing board and just reassess ourselves to see what role we play in the whole thing. And when I realized that, I was like, oh, okay. And that was after the first game. I didn't play. In the second game, the guy made mistakes. He missed tackles, whatever. Coach said, Pat, get in there. I'm like, whoops. And now my number was called. And then I was ready. Not necessarily to make great plays, but to make the right call to get everybody else ready. See, and that's what the coach needed from me. And by default, I was able to do it. And for my sophomore year in college, to my senior year, I started.
That's a beautiful story, how to self-reflect. And this goes for anybody. You're taking yourself out of being a victim and what's real, and then how do I push forward anyway?
Yeah.
Even if it is real, even if racism is real or whatever adversity is coming our way, right? But especially, speaking of being a Black person in a racially tense climate, or any population of color, what is faced on a daily basis, and that could really be helpful for all of the people watching this. That is really important. Good for you. And that's why you are a social worker, because you had all that insight. And so, and one of the things too, we're just going to discuss really quick in this last little few minutes is the long-term impacts of being a victim and being traumatized from racial trauma, hate crimes, all of that displacement and segregation. And how do you feel like that has impacted the African American communities to this day, and how can we change it?
So I would say this, what has helped me, and I think also what you do with your art is allowing people to express themselves through art, what's inside of them, and being able to express it in art. And that is, when I read that, is a position I take, and I've learned through my teachings, is that having the knowledge of self, that you define who you are by getting to know who you are more, right? Don't allow any outside world to find the greatness that's already in you. There's spiritual people that believe in, Buddha, Christianity, Islam, whatever. They know there's a greater power, and they know that they come from those greater powers or the great spirit. And he creates human life to excel and move forward, not to be stagnant and to live a poor life. When I say poor, not monetarily, but a rich life in spirit, and embrace the wonders of his works that we see every day when we look out our window. The water, the trees, everything is created from a greater spirit. Once you understand that you come from that spirit, what I see in the world doesn't affect me. I know I'm better than who I am. And it's about the empowering of people by giving them the knowledge of who they are, that they can overcome these powers to be that's trying to oppress who they are. They don't want you to be great, because if you are great and you know who you are, you now resist what's not for you, right? So I've been able to move forward in my life because I've come into a knowledge of self that has allowed me to, and has empowered me to understand that there's nothing that I can't do, that I can't achieve if I put my mind to it. And you surround yourself with allies and people that are on the same boat as you are, or that believe in the things that you believe.
That is so beautiful. I have tingles, right? Chills all over my body. That speaks to my soul. That is just beautiful, Patrick. You are truly a special man, and incredibly talented and creative and incredibly inspiring for so many people. So
Thank you.
am really excited to be able to have this discussion with you. And that is definitely a great solution, because when we rise above, nobody can squash us. The light always wins.
Light always wins, yes.
Yeah, when we shine our lights, then everybody else is blinded. So I know we have to wrap up, but let us know how to contact you and how to get your book.
All right, so let me just go back real quick. So, say, hold back here. Okay, so this is the first book, right? Before Common Ground, Living the American Dream. And it talks about my life. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, talks about my life from birth, literally from birth, my first signs of what I recognize as life in my cradle to signing my contract with the New York Giants. So it talks about my in England, coming to America, high school, college experiences, and signing my contract. Upon Common Ground
This is number two.
is it's book number 2 that talks about my life as a football player, where there I saw more of maybe what we're talking about. I don't know if it's racism or dominance of a culture over the men on the field, right? I said, I told you earlier that, it's 90%, 99% of players in the NFL are black, but the managers, owners are not, right? So I experienced those things in my journey when I signed my contract, not necessarily with the Giants, but I also went down to Miami, to the Miami Dolphins. And I, unfortunately or fortunately, I walked away from a contract because I saw the operation. I saw the wheels started to turn, and I saw what I didn't like. And I had a contract offer and I walked away from it. And I talk about that in this book.
I
So I
did.
probably could have played a little longer, but I walked away.
So you're like the Dave Chappelle of football players. He walked $50 million because of that, right?
Right.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, that I love how you stand in your morals, and you're really truly inspiring person for so many, not just the African American communities, but for everybody. So
Thank you. Thank you.
how can we get that book, and how can they contact you?
Oh, yes, you did ask me that, didn't you? So, so you can find on any platform. You could Google it. You go Before Common Ground or Upon This Ground I Trod. It's in Amazon. So you could go to Amazon and get it there. But you can find on most platforms. You can just type it in and it will come up. Yeah, if someone wanted to hit me directly, they could hit me directly through email, patricklivewell@yahoo.com, patricklivewell@yahoo.com. Send me your information, your address, $20 for a signed copy. I could send you a signed copy for $20 with your name and address. And you could, I have Cash App. Sorry.
Beautiful. Patrick Morrison, you are amazing. And thank you so much for being here. And I'm so excited to get to know you more and continue our conversations. And we can, have a part 2, part 3, potentially in the future. I would love that.
Yeah, we could definitely do a part 2. Just unfortunately, I have another call coming up, but definitely we could get into more detail about, what I did after football and my social engineering and different things. And we could talk about those things.
Awesome. All right.